They forced him to marry a $5 alien slave. But she was a princess in disguise. Elia's ward had once worn a clean uniform and stood on the bridge of a human evacuation ship, giving orders that saved thousands of lives. Now he stood barefoot on a rusted platform, surrounded by shouting aliens, blinking price boards, and the smell of old fuel and fear. The galactic trade station of Kelt 9 was not a place for mercy. It was where mistakes ended up. And according to the consortium, Elia's ward was a mistake. "You owe 5,000 credits," the registrar droned, its voice cold and flat. "You have no assets, no sponsor, no citizenship protection." Elias did not argue. He had learned long ago that arguing with the consortium only made things worse. "There is an alternative," the registrar continued. "Bond transfer, marital responsibility contract. You assume legal ownership and lifelong responsibility for one bonded individual. Debt cleared." A holographic screen lit up in front of him. Rows of alien faces appeared. Some looked angry, some broken, some barely alive. Elias clenched his fists. "You mean a slave?" The registrar tilted its head slightly. "The term is outdated. Choose." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Humans rarely came here, and when they did, they never had a choice. Most were dragged into labor contracts or disappeared into mining zones. A forced marriage bond was considered a joke, a punishment meant to humiliate. Elias stepped forward. He walked past the higher-priced listings, past the ones marked strong, useful, or obedient. His eyes stopped at the last one, 5 credits, the cheapest listing on the board. She stood alone in a narrow containment field, small compared to most species. Her skin was pale silver, dull instead of shining. Faint scars crossed her arms and neck. Her hair, dark and long, was tied roughly behind her head. The display read, "NON verbal, defective, low value, compliant." Elias felt his stomach twist. "What happens if no one chooses her?" he asked quietly. The registrar answered without hesitation. "Recycling." He did not hesitate again. "I choose her." The laughter grew louder. A tall, insect-like trader clicked in amusement. "Human chooses trash," another voice sneered. 5 credits, that's what humans are worth now." Elias ignored them. He walked closer to the field. The alien woman looked up at him. Her eyes were deep and dark, and for just a moment something sharp flickered inside them. Not fear, calculation. The field dropped. A shock collar snapped into place around her neck. She did not flinch. The registrar began reading the bond terms. Elias barely listened. He was too focused on the fact that she stood straight, shoulders back, eyes steady. No bonded being acted like that. The contract ended with a sharp tone. "Bond complete, debt cleared." Just like that, his past was erased, and his future was tied to a 5-credit alien no one wanted. They were given a small transport cabin and released from the platform. As the doors closed behind them, the noise of the market faded. Elias exhaled slowly. "It's just us now," he said gently. "I won't hurt you, I won't order you, you don't owe me anything." She said nothing. He removed his jacket and offered it to her. She looked at it, then at him, then took it carefully. Her fingers brushed his hand. They were steady. They sat in silence as the transport lifted away from the station. Hours passed before they reached the outer docks where human ships were allowed to land. Elias prepared a simple meal from ration packs. He placed the food between them and stepped back. "You can eat first." She watched him closely, then took a small bite. Her eyes widened slightly, as if she had forgotten what warm food tasted like. Later, as the ship drifted quietly, Elias spoke again. "I need to know what to call you." For a long moment she did not move, then she spoke. "Lyra." Her voice was calm, clear, strong. Elias froze. You can talk." "Yes, they said you were nonverbal." "They lie." That single sentence sent a chill through him. "Why?" he asked. She met his gaze. "Because silence keeps you alive." Before he could respond, the ship shuddered. Warning lights flashed. A sharp voice crackled over the comm. "Unregistered vessel, prepare for inspection." Lyra stood instantly. "They found me." "Who?" Elias asked, heart pounding. "The ones who sold me," she said, "and the ones who want me dead." The airlock controls flashed red. Armed consortium inspectors appeared on the external cameras. Elias stepped in front of her without thinking. The door opened. 3 armored figures entered, weapons lowered but ready. "Routine inspection," the lead officer said. "Bond verification." Lyra lowered her eyes, pretending to be silent again. The officer raised a scanner and pointed it at her. The device beeped once, then screamed. The officer stiffened. The scanner's screen flashed symbols Elias did not understand, but the officer did. Royal genetic marker detected. The officer's eyes widened. He slapped the scanner, forcing it silent, then turned sharply to his team. Faulty reading, he snapped. Ignore it. Elias saw the fear in their movements, the way their hands trembled. You just said it was routine, Elias said slowly. So why are you shaking? The officer glared at him. Stay out of it, human. Lyra lifted her head. If they take me, she said softly, they will erase this ship, and you with it. The officer raised his weapon. Elias did not move. By consortium law, Elias said, his voice steady despite the terror burning in his chest. She is my bonded partner. You touch her, you violate a civilian household contract. The officer hesitated. That hesitation saved Elias' life. They backed away slowly, sealing the door behind them. The ship fell silent. Lyra turned to Elias, her expression unreadable. You should not have chosen me, she said. Elias swallowed. I don't regret it. For the first time, a small, sad smile touched her lips. Then, she said, you have made yourself very dangerous. The stars drifted outside the viewport as alarms echoed faintly in the distance. Somewhere in the galaxy, a lie had almost been exposed. And humanity had just married into it. The ship did not return to any station after that. Elias changed course toward deep space, away from trade lanes and consortium patrol routes. He worked in silence, his hands steady even though his mind was racing. Lyra stood near the viewport, watching the stars as if she knew them by name. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Finally, Elias broke the silence. They were afraid of you. Yes, Lyra said. Fear is the only truth the consortium respects. Who are you really? He asked. She did not answer at once. Instead, she walked to the small table and sat down across from him. When she spoke, her voice was calm, but there was weight behind every word. My people were called the Aurelian Court, she said. We ruled 7 systems. Not through conquest, but through law and balance. The consortium wanted our worlds. We refused to sign their trade surrender. Elias listened closely. They came with fleets, she continued. They called it liberation. They destroyed our cities, burned our records, and executed my family in public broadcasts. I was hidden away, smuggled out by servants who died buying me time. And then they sold you, Elias said quietly. Yes, to erase me. A princess sold for 5 credits is a joke the galaxy will believe. Elias felt anger rise in his chest, slow and heavy. They underestimated you. They underestimated you, Lyra corrected. No one expects a human to care. The ship's sensors suddenly chimed. Elias turned to the console. We're being tracked. They won't attack yet, Lyra said. They want this quiet. Elias made a decision. He opened a secure channel and sent a coded message across an old frequency. It was a signal few still used, one that belonged to humans who had fallen through the cracks of galactic society. Within hours, replies began to arrive. A cargo captain who owed Elias his life. A colony lawyer who hated the consortium with a passion. A retired fleet engineer who knew every loophole in interstellar law. Humans answered. The ship docked at a drifting human settlement built from old wrecks and patched metal. It was ugly, fragile, and alive. People stared when Elias arrived with Lyra at his side, shock collar removed, standing proud. They did not ask questions. They offered shelter. Days passed. The consortium made no public move, but pressure built in the shadows. Accounts froze, supplies delayed, warnings issued. Elias and Lyra stood before a council of humans in a crowded hall. They want her returned, Elias said, quietly. And if we do, someone asked. They'll call us criminals, another said. Lyra stepped forward. They already see you as that. Silence followed. Then an old woman laughed. I like her. Plans formed quickly. Humans were good at that. They gathered evidence, old treaties, forgotten clauses. They spread information through trade channels, careful and precise. The key was the bond. By consortium law, marriage bonds were sacred contracts, recognized across species to ensure labor stability. Breaking one without due process was illegal. Elias and Lyra's bond was real. A formal challenge was filed. The consortium was forced to respond in public. A tribunal was called. The hearing took place on a neutral station, broadcast across multiple systems. Consortium officials sat behind polished barriers. Elias and Lyra stood alone with only human observers behind them. The lead arbitrator spoke. The bonded individual is property acquired through legal trade. Lyra lifted her chin. I am not property, I am a citizen by marriage. Murmurs spread. Elias presented the evidence, records of falsified scans, proof of illegal enslavement of protected species. Historical data showing the Aurelians were never legally conquered. The consortium representatives shifted uncomfortably. Then Lyra spoke again. "I am Lyra Aurelian," she said clearly, "last living heir of the Aurelian court. And by your own laws, you sold a sovereign royal into forced bondage." The station fell silent. The arbitrator checked the data. His voice wavered. "If this is true, the consortium is in violation of—" Elias stepped forward. "And by law, any action against her is an act of aggression against a human civilian household." The broadcast cut briefly, then returned. Across the galaxy, systems watched. The consortium tried to threaten sanctions. Humans responded by freezing routes, delaying shipments, and refusing service. Nothing violent, nothing illegal, just cooperation. It was devastating. Within days, the consortium's profits dipped. Within weeks, smaller species began asking questions. If a human could protect a princess with nothing but stubborn law and loyalty, what else was possible? The tribunal ruled. The bond was upheld. Lyra was recognized as a free individual and a protected sovereign. The consortium was fined, censured, and forced to issue a public apology. It was the first time they had ever done so. Afterward, Elias and Lyra stood together in a quiet corridor. "You could reclaim your throne now," Elias said. She shook her head. "Not yet. My people need time." "And she paused. "I want to stay." "With me?" he asked. "With humanity," she said. "You fight differently. You do not conquer. You refuse to let go." Elias smiled faintly. "It gets us in trouble." "Yes," she said, "but it changes the galaxy." They returned to the human settlement not as fugitives but as symbols. Lyra began working with diplomats and refugees. Elias helped build networks to protect others trapped by the consortium's contracts. The galaxy took notice. New reports circulated, risk assessments updated. Humans were no longer listed as weak. They were listed as unpredictable, dangerous. Because if you hurt one of theirs, they would not stop. Not for profit, not for fear, not even for reason. And it all began because a human refused to let a 5-credit life be recycled. "If you want, I can now." Months passed after the tribunal, but peace did not come easily. The consortium did not forget humiliation. Elias felt it in small things at first. Trade ships that refused to dock. Messages that went unanswered. Quiet warnings sent through unofficial channels. Humanity had won a legal victory, but the galaxy ran on more than law. It ran on fear, favors, and memory. Lyra understood this better than anyone. "They will not strike openly," she said one evening as they stood on the outer platform of the settlement, watching repair drones move like slow insects across broken hulls. "They will look for cracks." "They'll find humans," Elias replied. "We're full of those." She smiled slightly. "And yet you hold together." The settlement had grown. More ships arrived every week. Refugees from bonded worlds, traders tired of consortium control. Even a few alien species who had never trusted humans before but now watched them carefully with new respect. Not because humans were strong, because humans did not let go. Lyra had become a quiet center of gravity. She did not claim titles. She did not demand loyalty. She listened, she learned. She helped design systems that shared resources fairly, that protected the weak without forcing obedience. It confused everyone. Elias watched her work and wondered how someone raised in a royal court could move so easily among scrap metal and tired faces. One day, a message arrived that changed everything. It came through an encrypted human network, old and rarely used. "Consortium fleet massing near Aurelian space." Elias read it twice. "They're going back." Lyra's expression hardened. "They never truly left." "They could wipe what remains of your people," Elias said. "Yes," she replied, "and they know I cannot ignore it." The council gathered that night. Humans, aliens, traders, engineers, no uniforms, no ranks, just people. "They expect us to stay out of it," someone said. "It's not our war," Elias stood. "It became our war the moment they sold her." Silence followed. A young pilot spoke up. "We don't have a fleet. We don't need one," said the old engineer. "We have routes, codes, schedules. And laws," Lyra added. "They still bind themselves to law when it suits them." The plan was not glorious. No grand battle, no heroic charge. It was human. They spread information. They warned systems in the path of the fleet. They filed injunctions, emergency trade disputes, and citizen protection claims. They clogged consortium communication lines with perfectly legal requests. Every step slowed the fleet. Every delay cost credits. The consortium commanders grew impatient. They pushed harder. That was when the evidence was released. Lyra authorized it personally. Hidden archives from Aurelian space, proof of civilian destruction, forced labor programs, genetic erasure attempts. Documents the consortium had buried deep. The galaxy watched. Protests erupted on neutral worlds. Minor species refused docking rights. Insurance companies pulled coverage. Crew members deserted. Still, the fleet advanced. Elias and Lyra stood aboard a small human ship at the edge of Aurelian space. Broken planets drifted silently beyond the viewport. "This is where my family died," Lyra said softly. Elias placed a hand on the console. "Then we make sure it's where their lie ends." They broadcast a final message on an open channel. "This is Elias Ward of the Human Settlement Network," he said. "By consortium law, any hostile action in this system violates protected civilian recovery zones. You proceed, you do so illegally." The consortium admiral responded, his voice cold. "You have no authority." Lyra stepped forward. "I do," she said, "as sovereign heir, as bonded citizen of humanity, as witness." The channel fell silent. Behind the consortium fleet, ships began to peel away. Crews refused orders. Captains cited risk clauses. No one wanted to be the one recorded as starting another illegal war. The admiral hesitated too long. The fleet withdrew, not in defeat, in fear. News spread faster than any ship could travel. The consortium had backed down again, not to weapons. Not to force, to humans. Back at the settlement, life slowly returned to a fragile normal. Trade resumed. New alliances formed. Small worlds reached out quietly, asking questions. "What happens if we resist?" Elias answered honestly. "It will hurt, it will cost you. But you won't be alone." Lyra began rebuilding the Aurelian court, not as an empire, but as a council, a place of record, memory, and refuge. Humans helped not as rulers, but as partners. One evening, as the stars drifted past, Elias and Lyra sat together in the quiet. "You changed the course of history," Elias said. She shook her head. "You did," he frowned. "All I did was choose you." "That is enough," she replied. "Most atrocities survive because someone looked away." The galaxy updated its classifications again. Humans were no longer listed as unpredictable. They were listed as systemic disruptors, a species that did not seek control, yet broke empires by refusing to accept their rules. A species that would marry a stranger for 5 credits and turn it into a revolution. Far away in polished halls, consortium leaders argued late into the cycle. "How do we deal with them?" one demanded. Another answered quietly. "You don't. You avoid them, or you change." And for the first time, change felt possible. Because humanity had proven something terrifying and simple. You cannot defeat a species that treats dignity as non-negotiable. And it all began when one human chose not to walk past the cheapest life on the board. "If you want, I can." The galaxy did not calm down after the fleet withdrew. In many ways, that moment only opened the door to something larger. The consortium survived, but it was no longer untouchable. Its power rested on silence, fear, and the belief that resistance was useless. Humanity had broken that belief. Once broken, it did not heal. Elias felt the change everywhere. Messages arrived daily from worlds he had never heard of. Some asked for advice, some asked for protection, some simply asked one question: "How did you do it?" He always gave the same answer: "We didn't accept the rules, they used to hurt people." Lyra watched the changes with careful eyes. She understood systems, power, and collapse. The consortium was not dying yet. Wounded beasts were dangerous. "They will adapt," she warned the council. "They always do." And she was right. The consortium changed tactics. Instead of force, they offered reform, new charters, new language, committees, and promises. On the surface, it looked like progress. But beneath it, the same hands still held the chains. One morning, a transport arrived unannounced. It carried a delegation under a white flag of negotiation. Elias did not trust it, but refusing would give the consortium an excuse. They met in an open hall surrounded by humans and allied species. No walls, no secrets. The lead delegate smiled too easily. "We recognize humanity's unique position," he said. "We wish to cooperate," Lyra spoke calmly. "Then end bonded labor." The smile faltered. "That is complex." "Then you are not here to cooperate," she replied. The talks ended quickly. Weeks later, the consequences came. Trade lanes were rerouted, neutral ports closed, supplies slowed. The settlement felt it first. Power shortages, food rationing. Pressure carefully applied, people grew tired, angry. Elias felt the weight of it. They're squeezing us. Yes, Lyra said, they want us to fracture. And fractures appeared. Some argued for compromise, others wanted to push harder. Voices rose, trust strained. That was when the first attack happened. Not a fleet, not weapons. A lie. A broadcast spread across the galaxy claiming the human settlements were building an empire. That Lyra planned to rule through humans as her private army. Images were altered, words twisted. Protests broke out on distant worlds. Allies hesitated. Elias watched the feed in silence. They're turning our strength against us. Lyra closed her eyes. They are using fear of what you could become. The council gathered again, but this time the mood was different. Frustration, doubt. What if they're right? Someone asked. What if we scare the galaxy? Lyra stood slowly. She did not raise her voice. Power is not what scares people, she said. Intent does. If we stop acting with clarity, they win. She proposed something radical. Transparency, every record, every decision, every resource shared openly. No secrets, no closed doors. Humans hesitated. It went against every survival instinct. Elias nodded first. If we hide, we look guilty. The system went live within days. Anyone, anywhere could see how decisions were made, where supplies went, who benefited. The effect was immediate. The consortium tried to twist the data. Failed. Too many eyes now, too many independent analysts. The lie collapsed, and something unexpected happened. Other species copied the model. Small councils formed, open networks, shared defense agreements that were not armies but promises. The consortium could not fight them all. Months passed. The pressure eased slowly. Trade returned through new routes, not controlled by one power. Elias stood on the platform again, watching ships come and go. The settlement was no longer small. It was a hub. Lyra joined him. You never wanted this, she said softly. No, Elias replied, but I won't walk away. She looked at him. Neither will I. A message arrived from Aurelian space. Survivors had returned, not many, enough. They want to see you, Elias said. Lyra took a long breath. Then we go. They traveled together not as rulers but as witnesses. The ruins were quiet, broken towers, open skies. Life beginning again in small ways. The survivors did not bow, they thanked her. We don't want a throne, one said. We want safety, Lyra nodded. Then we build that together. As they left, Elias realized something. The galaxy was changing not because humans were strong or clever or stubborn. It was changing because humans stayed. They did not conquer and leave. They did not rescue and disappear. They remained, dealing with the slow, difficult work of fairness. That scared empires more than fleets ever could. Far away, consortium leaders reviewed new reports. Human influence spreading, one said. Another replied, they don't call it influence, they call it help. Silence followed. Can we stop it? No, came the answer. Only join it. Or become irrelevant. Elias and Lyra returned home to a settlement that felt less like a refuge and more like a foundation. One evening, Elias asked, do you ever regret being found? Lyra looked at the stars. No, because I was not saved, I was respected. He smiled. The galaxy would not become peaceful overnight. There would be more lies, more pressure, more loss, but something had shifted. Humanity was no longer reacting to injustice. It was shaping what came after, and all of it traced back to one moment long ago on a rusted platform. A human who refused to accept that a life could be worth 5 credits. If you want, I can.